Okay, everybody, are we all set? Okay, good evening and welcome to the Thursday, April 13th, 2023 regular meeting of the school committee. We have just returned from executive session and I would invite those who are here in the studio to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so first on the agenda is public comment. Does anybody want to make a public comment? Okay, and then if it's okay, I would like to skip ahead because I know that there's a senior event happening right now, and if you would like to return back to your event. It's wonderful that you've taken time to come. We don't want you to miss out.
Yeah, well, that'd be so awesome if I could.
Go right ahead.
Really nice out. Yeah, great. So I think that most of the senior class is surprised yet warmly welcoming the fast approaching end to their final year as students in Hopkinton. Students who are going to do a senior project, which is 200 people, will no longer need to attend their honors or CP courses after April vacation. To celebrate the closing of this year, the class of 2023 is currently having a senior sunset field day, which is somewhat symbolic since the class started off with a senior sunrise. The celebration will be carried into tomorrow afternoon since there's going to be an ice cream truck outside of the school once the day ends. I'm not sure if the ice cream's free or not, though. I would have mentioned that if I did. On Wednesday night, both the middle school and the high school had their jazz ensembles. This is after the high school ensemble won their Gold Award, which allows them the opportunity to play at the Hatch-Shell Boston Esplanade on May 7th. And finally, during Flex Block today, the senior class was presented a mental health collaborative presentation. This went over the importance of mental health and how to make sure you have efficient strategies to manage stress, especially since most of the students will be attending college next year and they'll be in a new environment. And that's all the updates.
I think we can do a recognition now.
Yes, we do recognition as well.
We have a recognition. Just a little something to say thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
And bringing us all that information from the high school and taking information back.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. It's my favorite part of the week, Thursday night.
You are our favorite part of the meeting. And you brought a lot of really good and important information to us, and that helps us stay a little bit in touch with what's going on at the high school and to really focus on what we're here for, which is the students. So.
Thank you so much, yeah. And thank you for offering this position. I think it's a really cool opportunity to allow students to learn what's going on and also allow them to demonstrate skills that they learn in school. And I really appreciate it. So thank you all.
Did you learn a lot here?
Great job.
What?
Did you learn a lot here?
Oh, so much. I did. In all seriousness,
Especially
I
at
did.
10:30 on some of those nights where you're
Yep.
like, this is really great. Yep.
Thank you.
We're going to ask you to open that up so
Oh.
you can model it.
Oh, boy.
Wow. Oh, wow. Thank you so
Look at the other
much.
side.
It's a water bottle that says Clear. Oh, wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How'd you guys know that?
We had to call the guidance department. They gave us the information, and then we had to go to your college and buy that, and then put the H on the other side for you.
They really charge you.
But you were worth it.
Thank you so much.
No,
Thank you,
we
taxpayers.
appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Pretty cool.
Thank you, guys.
All right, go back and have fun. Yeah,
So much.
Enjoy that.
Items earlier today, did I see you?
I did.
Yep.
Yes, I did.
Thank
I
you
brought some
so much.
Gatorade.
Yeah. There'll be pictures posted and everything. It's really awesome. It's a really cool meeting.
Oh, great.
Or not meeting, but you know,
Yeah.
within the group.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
very
All
much.
right.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there other recognitions before we move into the rest of our reports?
I have a recognition. Yesterday I was invited to the high school to go to Diana Millett RAD simulation demonstration, and it was incredible. She had volunteer police officers to act as aggressors. She had monitors. They were from all over. People that come year after year to Hopkinton to help her. And like unexpectedly, the whole group was all young women. But I just started crying. It was like an incredibly empowering event. And these girls are so brave that they go up against these giant police officers covered in gear. Like, I was like, nope, no thanks. And they would just go up there, and the tiniest little girl would kick their asses. I was like, sorry for the swearing, but honestly, it was like it was incredible. This program is amazing. I'm so happy it's happening. I'm so happy that we are looking out for our kids' safety in that way. But I'm really grateful I got to go, and that's my recognition.
It is an amazing program.
Yeah.
They offer it both semesters, so they did it another one in, it was December, I think, when they did it. And Diane Millette, really, who's the wellness teacher, really is wonderful.
And
with
the
that.
girls that were like scared, she would be like, I got you. She would like hold their back. She'd stand there and like, you can do this. And I was like, I need her to like help me manage my children.
Oh, yeah. And I know I have two daughters who went through that
That's
program.
awesome.
It's very emotional. The HPTO provides lunch for them to debrief afterwards,
was
and it really
amazing.
is. We are fortunate. It's a great offering to have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For kids. Do you want to miss anything?
Mine will be embedded in the superintendent.
Okay, well, that's like a cliffhanger for us then. All right, so superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. This is the superintendent's report for Thursday, April 13th, 2023. Here is my recognition. I just wanted to thank all of the teachers, the administrators, and the students who have been taking MCAS tests for these past few weeks. I know it, when parents send their children off and they say, oh, it's an MCAS day, I don't know that people realize how hard everyone has worked to get the kids there academically, to ensure that they're feeling sort of calm and ready to take the test, that someone in every one of those buildings has had to sort of register every one of those kids. It's an enormous amount of work, and so thank you to everybody in the district who has had to do that. One of the things that Mrs. Carver talked about with me in the last couple of days is that our third graders were actually asked to write 3 essays on a single test in a single testing day. And so you can imagine all of those 7 and 8-year-olds there who are working so hard to do that. I mean, they're spending a lot of brain energy during that test, and I'm really proud of them all. It's a lot of work for the kids and the adults. All right, I want to make people aware of an equity audit that's coming up. I think I've mentioned it before. Our Director of English Language Acquisition, Equity and Access, Jennifer Suker, has been working, and Laura Tice, the Assistant Principal at the high school, and we've been working with the town, Elaine Lazarus, Maria Casey, through a grant from Karen Spilka, and what we're doing is we're conducting a town-wide equity audit. So what parents can expect to see next Tuesday, they should be getting sort of a warning letter. Here it comes. You're going to be asked to fill out a survey. Then Sunday night, there'll be a reminder letter, and then the survey should come to them early next week, like Monday or Tuesday. So why are we doing this? We will, in the end, get a comprehensive report that will be shared with our school administrators, along with an action plan that should help us to improve experiences for our faculty and our students and our families. The survey that's coming to people is created by our consulting firm. They're called Promoting Good. It will go to students, families, faculty, and staff, and again, early the week after vacation. And this is going to be a SMART survey, so you'll get one survey, and then depending upon how you start to fill it out by identifying yourself as either a parent or a faculty member, it will move you to the questions that are appropriate for you. So we would really like as much participation as we can get with that. I mean, I think the more participation we have, the better informed we are to implement change.
A couple of questions with that. Will there be different language versions of the survey?
Yes. Jen Suker has been working with Connor Deegan so that the ones that go out on the town side will be translated, at least for the families that we know of. We have a list of these are the 8 languages that we have to translate for. So we'll be doing that for our families, and then Connor will be doing it on the town side for the same families.
Okay, beautiful.
Just a few curriculum highlights, one from each school. So what you see here, the high school, and thank you to Mr. Lebrad for continuing this, is they have a senior internship in education program. And so what that means is some of our seniors are able to go into other schools through the district and support teachers and students. They are actually paid for their work through the state. And I'll let you talk about it. It's your
Sure. No, it's a great opportunity that Jen Parson spearheaded the last couple of years in partnership with Evan Bishop and many others. It's a great opportunity for our high school students, primarily, all seniors, either seniors now or rising seniors who will get to help us during some of our summer programs. Really get to see what the game is all about on the other side. So we have, if you look at that picture, we've got individuals who will be working in middle school math classes. We have some individuals who will be working in our kindergartens and first grades. And as you heard Robert talk about earlier, very similar to the senior project, the students get to engage with as much or as little that feels right for them, that their schedules will allow. So for some of them, it will equate to something of a part-time job, which of course is great not only for them, but for the teachers that will get to sponsor them and support them. And I was telling the group the other day this is a shot from our orientation program. From my own experience, I still remember the 8th grader at my K-8 elementary school who took me to the bus every day as a kindergartner. And I told them that because I said, this experience, you'll have an impact on these kids in one way or another, and they will remember you. So we're looking forward to all the good that's going to come for all parties with this program once again.
Yeah, and maybe magically, some of these kids will develop a passion for teaching and come back to us as educators. So that would be great. Unified PE at the middle school. What the kids are working on here, they throw those objects up as high as possible. So there's that teamwork piece, like how can we all do this so that the objects go as high as possible, but it also builds motor control. So it's just really nice to see, our gen ed kids and our students with special needs, they're all working together in unified PE. What you see here, our 4th graders have been working on a guided inquiry unit around the national parks and social studies. So our 4th grade curriculum around the state does include learning about regions. So this will then lead the kids to opinion writing, where they try to convince the school that it used to be that their national park was the best of them all, but next year they're going to be doing this because when we add our 2 5th grade classrooms, we're going to need another national park team. So now the opinion writing is this is what it should be. This should be the name of the new one. So you can see a couple of Team Bryce enthusiasts right there. All right, this is the Elmwood School. Today was the culmination of March Madness. Last year, the 2 books were sort of neck and neck at the end. And this year, when Mr. Lebrad and I were there, we knew which book was going to win because every one of those kids walked into that gym chanting the title of that book. They were like, Yoshi, Yoshi. And it's a pretty amazing story of a sea turtle. And the sea turtle is moved, and then it finds its way all the way from Africa to Australia, finds its way back home. It's pretty amazing. And they know that because they embedded like little GPS in him, and they get to watch his whole journey. And as we were standing in the hallway at Elmwood and the kids were boarding the buses, they were still talking about the incredible book entitled Yoshi, the Sea Turtle Genius. So. Our kindergartners, they are collaging like Eric Carl. So I was over at Marathon the other day, and they were just starting to take the paper and paint as Eric Carl would, and then he would cut them all out and create collages out of them. But what our kids are doing with them is they are kind of doing that author study, but then they are also creating their own characters, their own animal characters, and creating narratives around their own animals. So. Really, really fun things happening. Kids are so engaged, and I love that in some of these you see the overlap of, looking at geographic regions and writing, or looking at an author study and writing, and looking at natural environments and the animals that inhabit them. So just a lot of like interdisciplinary stuff that I think makes kids, just get excited about learning. Just a quick best wishes to Mrs. Valello, who has announced that she's moving on to the Brookline Public Schools. She will surely be missed, and as I say all the time, she is an amazing instructional leader, so good for Brookline, not so good for Hopkinton. And then finally, I don't know if you have any questions, but a happy April vacation to everyone. You can feel the excitement in the schools. Everybody is ready to go.
So not so much a question, but I guess it is. have you ever heard of the Summer Bridge program? It's
don't
a
know.
really interesting,
stuff
so just expanding on the internship of students in education, the Summer Bridge program is students get to teach low income or higher risk students within the schools in the summer. So they get to be the teachers to enrich the students over the summer courses. So it's a really interesting program if you want to look into it.
Absolutely.
Because it might just be an extension of that work.
That's great.
Dr. Kavanaugh, no enrollment updates.
I
Everything's
know.
been quiet.
Things are pretty much status quo.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I feel like you just
And-
invited a lot of new enrollments.
I know that because as I was preparing that little report for appropriations, Georgette, and I saw that it was kind of flat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we only have 8 weeks left, so yeah, they'll start coming in hot in 9 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Kavanaugh? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So that brings us into the school committee chair report. Just to share that payroll warrant S2319A and S23020 have been approved. Also wanted to say that I did have a budget advisory group meeting last week. It seems like a long week this week. A week ago, not really anything new because of where the budget is in the process, and that was ahead of the appropriations committee hearing. I did also attend the public hearing for the appropriations committee on Monday. They actually did not have any questions or comments from the public, but they did, I'll save it for when we have our budget discussion, but they did talk about the budget as well. So that's all I have. Does anybody have any liaison reports?
Yes, BC2 met on Tuesday. There was some interesting data. First of all, they managed to get up to 70 faculty members to give feedback on the design of the schools, and they have actually started to redo the design based on that feedback. So, things like, if you have a child who might need a rest, a special education child who just may need to have a quiet place, that the way it was built before, they were like on the 3rd floor, and it's much easier to bring a child down to a room than up to a room. That was one of the pieces of feedback that they incorporated pretty much immediately, and they've moved that around. So it was really interesting. They also talked about, incorporating the flow of movement within the school, which was really, really pretty. It was like waterways. So how do you make it feel really organic as the kids walk through, and how do you make the two outer areas between the branches sort of feel like one of those pathways, like they could just step outside as kind of organically as they can step into one of the hallways. So there was a lot of really good stuff. They also brought up the differences between a CM and a general manager.
Yes.
And I can't remember what the CM stands for.
Design, bid, build, and
Yes.
CM at
CM at
risk.
risk.
Construction
CM at risk.
manager at risk.
So the two have very different cost structures. Design, bid, build, basically you're buying a building. So you're like giving them all the design stuff ahead of time. You hand it to them and they basically build your building, and they have a lot of control over everything. With the CM at risk, you have a lot of sort of integrated services that go along with it, and so there's a lot more touch points as you're going through. They did not give a recommendation yet. They gave some thoughts, but they didn't give a definitive recommendation about which way we should go yet. But that was another part of the presentation.
That was the
Was there
doozy.
anything
That was the doozy part.
No,
And
yeah, that
then-
was a huge
yeah.
part. Yeah.
Yes, and they did show a bunch of different facades for the exterior of the
Oh
building
yes,
too. Yes,
that was really pretty. So because it's a very tall building, they were showing how they could, by lightening the 2nd and 3rd floor using a lighter material, they could actually make the building seem less overwhelming. Right, so you could have like the 1st floor have like bricks and stones and things like that, and then have the upper floors have like a lighter beige or something, and so it would fade. So the building wouldn't seem as overwhelming, despite the fact that it's so big. So they that was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, the architects are truly artists. They're very into the if we add these little I don't even know you would call them, just like flashings. To me, they're decorations. I don't know what they are, but they just make the building look like not like a solid wall 3 stories tall. There's lots of depth changes in the different levels and lots of color changes, lots of windows.
The windows
Yes.
and the shading on the windows.
Yes.
How do we create shading on the windows and allow enough light through, but because it's going to be west facing, you know, there's going to be points in time where the light could be overwhelming coming through those windows. So what are the things they could do to shade it? So yeah, it was a fun meeting.
Yeah.
They think of everything, and they really are.
Yeah.
I mean, we lucked out with that firm. They really are just putting so much thought into it, and we haven't even gotten to the part where they actually really start to get into the building of the building kind of idea. Yeah, you know, we're not even there yet, so we'll be ready when we get there for sure. Yep.
That's great, thank you. Other liaison reports? Okay. All right, then that moves us into the school physician contract, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. So as you know, all schools have a school physician, and ours is Stephanie Boder. For this year, I'm recommending a 3% increase to what we pay her, which will next year, if approved, be $7,743.05.
Great. Questions or comments? Okay. All right, is there somebody who would like to make a motion to approve the school physician contract for 2023 to 2024? Okay, so motion by Holly, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jen, all those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous, and with many thanks to Dr. Boder for continuing on with us. Okay, that brings us into item B, which is the 2023 ATM articles, the annual town meeting for those sitting at home. And Dr. Kavanaugh, if you'd like to discuss that.
Shortly. So you have actually already voted to approve this once. What this allows the school district to do is to enter into contracts that go beyond 3 years. So sometimes we're buying like online textbooks, for example. You get a better price if you buy that textbook for 6 years rather than 3. This will appear on the annual town meeting warrant, and they like to know that the school committee has endorsed it. So we're just asking you to do that sort of again for the town meeting warrant.
Dr. Kevin, are we the sponsors of this article?
Yes, I think we're the sponsors of this article. Yeah.
Has there been any pushback from any of the other town groups or anything?
No.
Okay. It doesn't seem controversial, but I don't know. People get fired up about weird things. So.
Right. It'll save money, so they
Yeah.
can't get too far.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually a good thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Excellent. All right. If there are no other questions or comments, is there somebody who would like to make a motion?
I move to endorse the 2023 ATM article for school curricula, equipment, and service contracts for a term or terms in excess of 3 years, but not to exceed 6 years.
Okay. Motion by Leah. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jen. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. And that was everybody, right?
Yes.
Yes, it is unanimous, and we will see that at annual town meeting. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is first reading of policy BDFB, which is the CPAC policy that we had discussed when we were now a couple months ago talking about moving forward with CPAC. This is a first reading. It has not gone out to the public for comment yet, and we're not actually discussing it, but having just sort of the introduction. And then when we bring it back for a second reading, we will have more of a workshop style. We will invite CPAC here to collaborate and find a date that is mutually beneficial to all, I think works for all of us. So with that, I don't know if you want to sit up here while Dr. Kavanaugh talks about it, or let's just
Sure.
want to give the any of the history or the pieces on that.
Sure. So, was it over a month ago now, that the school personnel, the school committee, and CPAC got together, and we had a meeting to really discuss what it would look like, kind of, you know, what the relationship and the working relationship would be going forward. And one of the things we talked about was putting together a policy. We have policies on all kinds of things, but we don't have a policy that kind of codifies our work with the CPAC. So the policy working group, Mrs. Devlin and Mrs. Fargiano and I got together a couple of times, and we looked to see what other districts had. And what we've found is that a few districts do have CPAC policies, and consistent with what they're doing, we were also a policy BDFB, that's what we labeled it. And we took what they had and we modified it, very slightly. I think a lot of what's in here is what's encompassed in the law. And as you just said, this is really our first reading, but we don't only have the policy, but we also put in a procedure so that we have an understanding of what that looks like when the schools are actually working on it. And the policy tends to be a little bit more philosophical.
Okay, thank you. So before that, we bring that back for a second reading. I know that Dr. Zaleski and CPAC have both had it. We'll have an opportunity to hopefully get the feedback, not just from them, but also it will go out to the public so that we can get parent comments as well, or people in the educators or any other group of people who feel like they have something to add feedback-wise. So, okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you for bringing that forward. And just that, this has really been a priority that we have wanted to bring this forward because I know that it's important to CPAC and to the community, and just really wanting to move forward in the spirit of the meeting that we had. It feels like forever ago, but it really wasn't.
It wasn't. So nice to see you all.
It's nice to see you. So it is nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us into the bullying prevention and intervention and bias incident reporting report. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. So this is a report that has been requested, and annually we do take a look at our bullying reports and findings of those reports, and that's required by law. So we'll be doing a lot with this report tonight. Just to start, we'll talk a little bit about the bullying prevention and intervention plan. By law, you have to revise that every 2 years, and we are a very dutiful district because we go through that process. We last updated our bullying prevention and intervention plan in May of 2022. And it's really important that people don't confuse the bullying prevention and intervention plan with the policy. So this is really a complement to our district's anti-bullying policy, which is JICFB. So the goals of tonight's report are really to think about that policy and plan, and to communicate the district policy and plan for addressing bullying, to talk about restorative practices. That's something that the district has committed to over the last several years, so to inform the community about our commitment to those restorative practices, and then to kind of review reports to date. And that will be bullying reports as well as reports that come into us from the bias incident reporting form, or what we affectionately call the BIRF. All right, so to start with some bullying prevention measures, our plan talks a lot about the things that we do to preclude or to prevent bullying from even happening. So I think we do spend a lot of time in our public schools fostering respect. We integrate the idea of respect into our school activities, into curriculum, into special events, into athletics. I mean, I think that if you walk into any of our elementary schools, we're talking about kindness. We have respecting human identities courses. We have all of those kinds of things going on all of the time. And we continue to grow them. So when you hire your director of equity and access, or you hire an SEL director, those folks are also helping us to bolster what we have in place. Naturally, we have explicit instruction, and the explicit instruction comes in the form of a bullying prevention curriculum, really dealt to students by our wellness department. Mr. Lebrad is working very hard with Jeb Gorman, who is our SML for Wellness, and they're looking at those curricula again. I mean, I think we're always going through those revision processes.
Can I ask a question? Because I
Sure.
think this always comes up, and it's always good to revisit the definition of bullying per the district and per the law. What is bullying and what is it not?
We're going to have 2 slides on
Okay,
that.
perfect. Thank you.
Because I think that's a really important question.
Thank you.
And then finally, community collaboration. We are really fortunate to live in a community where we have youth and family services, our police department, our local pediatricians, all of our athletics organizations, houses of worship, our health administrator, our public library, the Hopkinton Freedom Team. And I really do think that as a community, those are the organizations, youth and family services, that really help us out. in going through a lot of our prevention measures. So here we go. So the answer to your question, how to define bullying. This is what it looks like if you open up our bullying, anti-bullying prevention and intervention plan. If you take a look at it, I think there are some words in there that are very important, and so I've highlighted those for you in red. But when we talk about an aggressor or a perpetrator, we say that they target others based upon their perception of an unequal physical and or psychological power relationship. So we have to remember that there is inequity in power in the bullying relationship. The second thing that we talk about when we talk about our aggressors and perpetrators is that they intend to harm their targets and do so repeatedly. So the two pieces there that I think are important are intention and repetition. I think sometimes, you do that kind of light teasing with a peer and you think that you're just being funny, but the peer has to say, it's kind of enough for me. So there's not an inequity in the sense of, one of us has more power, but the teasing, even though it might happen repeatedly, the intention wasn't there, nor was the inequity in power. So that's, as our building administrators kind of take a look at bullying, and we'll talk about those investigations, they go through that process, and then they have tons of notes, and they say, okay, is there intent here? Is this happening repeatedly? Is there inequity in power? And when they can say yes to sort of those three conditions, then they would say, yes, this is bullying. All right, so what is bullying, what not? We have a lot of times when a parent will say, well, my child has been in conflict with another child or quarreling, and those things are really not bullying. They'll happen for a very long time. Your child might get off the bus and say, I am so tired of arguing with so-and-so. But if there's not the intent to bully and there's not the inequity, what that really is conflict or quarrel or problems that need to be resolved. And I think our building principals and assistant principals do a really nice job of getting our kids out of those kinds of disagreements. Teasing that occurs occasionally between friends without the intent of harming each other. Teasing can be upsetting or offensive to the recipient. It must always be discouraged, but the intention is not to have harm or to have power over another person, as is the case with bullying. So this language comes right out of the bullying intervention plan. And these are just two examples, but there are lots of things that bullying is not. And we just have to be very careful to remember those kind of criteria that need to be in place for for behavior to be called bullying.
Do you mind if I add something? Because I think there's one particular situation that to the child feels like bullying. Per this definition, it really isn't. It's part of the reason we have the birth, right?
Yes.
Which is the child is in an unequal relationship of power, but is getting targeted by numerous individuals once, right? So the child feels bullied because they are getting targeted so many times, but there isn't the repetition of one person being the aggressor constantly. And that's the reason, part of the reason we have the birth now, is so that we can address a situation like that.
Yes, like that child is sort of a target or a victim of some kind of bias,
Right.
but it's not a single person who is continuing that behavior.
I think it's sometimes challenging in the community too, because there are things when your child has been the victim of some of the other things that are not legally considered bullying.
Right.
It doesn't mean that nothing happened. It doesn't mean that what the other child did doesn't need to be addressed, or that there needs to be some sort of restorative practice. It doesn't mean that there can't be safety considerations and whatnot.
Completely agree. The reason I brought it up is because I know that 2 years ago when we were doing the bullying stuff, or a year ago, that was a big source of confusion, concern, conflict in terms of, to a child in that situation, they feel bullied,
Yes.
right? Whether or not it meets the legal definition. And so I just wanted to be clear so parents who are listening understand that there's this terminology that's very specific for bullying, but we're trying to create a secondary avenue, right, to allow those children to be heard.
Yes, we had an adult in our schools who was very good at giving an example of that. He would say, you know, I identify as a person of Asian descent, and people would say to me, well, you're Asian, you should be very smart, or you're Asian and you want to play basketball. And, you know, as you kind of went through the day, those kinds of comments would be made, and people wouldn't think much of them. But at the end of the day, all of that sort of bias that kind of came out about Asian people, he said it was hard to go through, especially middle school that way. You know, and here's an adult, someone who's in his 30s now, who had that conversation with us, but that was a really nice reason to sort of generate that bias reporting for him. So we do have a slide on what if parents are concerned. So if you are concerned, something's happening with your child and you're not sure if it's bullying or if it's some other behavior or if it's, you know, the manifestation of a bias, or if your child is just experiencing, you know, quarrel or, you know, problems with another kid, that parent should always call the assistant principal or the principal and have that conversation with them. And you're going to see that there have been people this year who have filled in the bullying report form, had a conversation then with the administrator and said, I see, so there's a resolution to this. It's not really bullying. I want to withdraw my form. And we'll talk about ways to remedy what's going on. So we should also talk about when and where with bullying, because I think sometimes something will happen on the weekend and, you know, at somebody's home or, you know, in an athletic team that isn't associated with the public schools, and parents will call and say, I think that my child is being bullied and I think it's happening on, you know, in our baseball league. And so we have to be very clear with parents that if these behaviors are taking place on school grounds or property that's immediately adjacent to school grounds or at any school-sponsored or school-related event. So it could happen on a field trip. It's still the responsibility of the school. If it happens at a bus stop, it's still the responsibility of the school. If it's happening on school buses or in any other, you know, vehicle that might be leased by the school district, it's our problem. Or if it's happening through the use of our technology and typically on our time, then it becomes something that our schools will in fact investigate. If it takes place out of school, it impacts the schools when it creates a hostile environment in school for a target or a witness. And so then, again, we would deal with it. If it infringes on the rights of the target or a witness at school, or if it materially and substantially disrupts the educational process, in any of those situations, we step in and start to rectify the issue. But if it's something that happens on the baseball team, that's not one that we own. So it's just really important, I think, for people to know where and when the two schools take the responsibility for intervening and helping students with the bullying, and when some other organization might. How do you report bullying? So we should talk about the fact that every student is afforded the same legal protections regardless of your status, and every student is protected against retaliation. There are ways to report bullying and cyberbullying, and I think we try as a school district to make that as clear as possible. There are disciplinary consequences for all bullying behavior. Every child has the right to due process, and if a student knowingly makes a false accusation of bullying or retaliation, there is also disciplinary action. So where would you find that bullying report form? If you go to the district's homepage, and this is probably in the upper third of that homepage if you're scrolling down. This is a really big button that you can click on, and if you click here, you can report an incident of bullying, and harassment falls under that category of bullying, so you can report that there as well. There are instructions for you. If you go to any one of the school pages, if you look under student services, you'll find it there. If you look under family resources, you'll find it there. If you use our Find It Fast feature, you'll find it there. So there are many, many ways to find that form when you are accessing the website. But that right there on the main page is the really big button, and it's probably the easiest way to get to it. All right, so how do investigations work? As soon as someone files a bullying report form, the investigation is launched immediately. If it happens on Friday at 5 o'clock, on Monday morning at 8, the assistant principal or principal is launching that investigation. If it happens, at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, the next morning it starts. Rarely is there an opportunity for it to linger. So if in the event that the target doesn't come to school, or if there's a great big blizzard, that might slow it down for a day, but the investigation has to start immediately. When it does, safety plans are put into place to make sure that the alleged aggressor and the target are in places where both of them are feeling safe. The principal and the assistant principal begin to conduct all of the interviews. We start with the alleged target. When those interviews are going on, we always have 2 adults present, and we try to make sure that one of the adults in that room is someone who is familiar with the child being interviewed. We then put together all kinds of relevant documents. Sometimes that's a screenshot, sometimes that's an email, sometimes that's something that came out of a kid's backpack, sometimes it's a video in a hallway. So all of those documents and artifacts come into play as well. And then very frequently our building principals and assistant principal will call the district legal counsel to kind of help us along with the investigation, to kind of get a second set of eyes to say, I'm thinking that this is bullying, but the form of bullying that it is, I think, is probably harassment. And they help us with those kinds of legal definitions. All right, so another thing that happens is people will wonder, gosh, are we underreporting bullying or what's going on in the town of Hopkinton? So if you go to the DESE website, it's really easy for you to access our discipline data reports, and they go back several years. So what I've done is I've taken screenshots here, and the first community is Hopkinton. I isolated this search just to bullying, and you can see that in 21-22, we had 13 students who were disciplined for bullying. If you look, 12 of those students were male, and one of those students was a female. 3 of those students identified as high needs, so I would imagine that when we're looking at those numbers, 2 of them were students with disabilities and 1 was low income, because both of those categories would feed into high needs. One of those students identified as Asian, 2 of them identified as multi-race, non-Hispanic, and then the other 10 identified as white. So you get that data on the DESE website. So I thought I'll just take other districts that we tend to put into our what's your per pupil expenditure. And the first couple that I looked at had no data in there, which means that they had no findings of bullying whatsoever in the 21-22 school year.
Excuse me, Dr. Howard.
Yeah.
Findings or reports? It has findings. These are
Yep.
findings. Okay.
Yeah. So District A that is had 3 students who were disciplined for bullying, and you can again see that they were 3 males, they were 3 white males. One of them was a student with disabilities, or maybe one of them was both with disabilities and high needs, obviously. The other 2 were not. Then, and I didn't include the names of these districts. People can Google if they, go into DESE website and figure out who's who. Another one had only 1 student disciplined for bullying. That is a student with disabilities. It's a male and it's a white male. The next one also had 1 student disciplined for bullying. It's a low-income student, which puts that person into the high needs category. Again, male, and in this particular case, that student was African American, black. So you can see that in these 4 communities, I had Hopkinton and then District A, B, and C, the numbers of findings in districts similar to ours. And when I say that, I sort of mean academically, socioeconomically, the numbers of findings tend to be low. So just a really quick word about findings. Sometimes when we go through the whole bullying process, if it's directed at a student because of race, traits historically associated with race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, sex, socioeconomic status, homelessness, academic status, gender identity or expression, physical appearance, pregnant or parenting status, sexual orientation, mental, physical, developmental, or sensory disabilities, or by association with a person who's perceived to have one or more of those characteristics, we would then talk about that as harassment. So what has occurred this far this year? And we're only a short way to the end of the year. So at Marathon, there were 2 reports filed, and neither one of those was a finding of bullying, but in each one, there was a determination of inappropriate behavior. And so I don't want people to think that nothing is done if there's inappropriate behavior. Of course, we have appropriate consequences for the inappropriate behavior based on the developmental level of the child. At Elmwood, we had 4 reports filed. 1 was withdrawn. 3 were no findings of bullying, and in those 3, they were 3 reports of findings of inappropriate behavior. At Hopkins, we've had 6 reports, 4 findings of no bullying, 2 findings of bullying, and in this case in particular, those 2 findings of bullying fell into the category of harassment. At the middle school, 6 reports, 5 no findings of bullying, and 1 was withdrawn. And at the high school, there was 1 report, and again, no finding of bullying, but a support plan that was implemented is what the high school has reported. In terms of the bias incident reporting form, or the BIRF, at the high school, there were 4 reports made. 2 identified complainants, and the high school administration followed up with them directly. 1 was anonymous, but that one is being watched closely, and 1 of the filings was a prank. At the middle school, there were 10 submissions. 2 of them were identified complainants. The school followed up with them directly and discovered that it was student conflict. 2 of the complainants reported on things that didn't warrant a full investigation, but the administration followed up with those people who were involved. 5 of them were missing names of individuals or were submitted anonymously. And I would really encourage kids who want the administration to act upon these things to leave us either their names or the names of the perpetrators or the alleged perpetrators. So I've put in an example of one where we didn't get any kind of name whatsoever, so there's really no way to act upon it. But in this one, it said, someone said something about people's bodies. She said it looked like she had no pants on. It made my friend uncomfortable. It would be really nice in that situation if an assistant principal could go and work through whatever this is, this conflict with these kids, and maybe come to a different understanding, but we don't have the opportunity to do that without names. All right, I just want to quickly talk about restorative practices. We have, and this might be important because we recently added this in May of 2022 to our bullying prevention and intervention plan. And we did it because there is an evolution in thinking on the part of the state. It used to be that you would never ask a target and a perpetrator to get together, but now the thinking is that if that's something that both parties are willing to agree to, it's a good idea. We've started to do a lot of restorative work, and I think this language is really nice that it has been added to our plan, and it's being added to plans across the Commonwealth. Carla Burley, who is our Director of Social Emotional Learning, has introduced us to the 7 core assumptions. And I think that as we are looking at these, what we see is this belief in humanism and belief in community. It's kind of encompassed in all of this.
I love these. I love these, yeah.
Really great. So one of the things that she's done is she has brought in Tier 1 restorative justice training, and we've done a lot of work in circle practices. And the whole idea behind these circle practices is that you have this sort of lovely community, it's interactive, and it doesn't really matter sort of who you are. You're brought in as a voice and a member of the community. And so if there used to be in classrooms and in other settings, places where people in terms of power structure maybe had more social capital or more power than someone else, these circles are designed to kind of eradicate this, to kind of give everybody that feeling of safety and belonging. So in terms of our early adopters in 22-23, so this school year, we had 5 administrators across the middle school and high school trained, 15 teacher leaders, 38 classroom teachers, and 10 paraprofessionals. So it's really exciting that we've got that many people underway. Over April vacation, we have people who are willing to come in. They'll be paid the curriculum rate to do that, but I think it's about 31 or 32 people, and Suffolk will be training even more people over April vacation. So we are lucky me that our educators are so willing to participate in this and to kind of be brought along in this process. In 23-24, we will embark upon Tier 2 training. We'll have school administrators, teachers, and counselors. And in 24-25, we will embark upon the Tier 3 training. So there is a 3-year plan, and I think Tier 1 has gone, to my thinking, honestly, amazingly. When we were doing this last summer, I know there was a lot of trepidation on the part of the administrators and the teachers, like, oh, it's summer. What if this isn't great training? What is it? And then opening day, I think in almost every middle school and high school classroom, people were conducting circles with the kids. I mean, well, with each other to start, and then I think even with the kids afterward. And so we're hoping that this is going to reduce some of that student conflict or biases or even bullying. I will leave you with the quote that opens our bullying prevention and intervention plan. The Hopkinton Public Schools celebrates the fact that legislation requires the implementation of a comprehensive anti-bullying plan in every district. This aligns with our commitment to creating a safe, inclusive, supporting learning community for all students. Every year, our teachers are required to undergo bullying training once more. When you are newly hired, it's an extensive anti-bullying training, and every parent is required to sign off on the handbooks, and all of this appears in the handbooks, and it's linked there as well. So anything we can do to continue to promulgate this kind of information, where to find reports, where to find forms, where to find the plan, where to find the policy, it's all out there, and I think we have a lot really to be proud of in our district, the work that we do.
Thank you.
One of the reasons I had asked for this to be reviewed is that since I had been elected, I don't think I've had a week go by where I've had somebody talk to me about something going on in their children's life, whether it's bullying or inappropriate behavior or what have you. And like, I have the opportunity often to talk to other schools, other school committees, and it seems like this is not a Hopkinton problem, this is not a Massachusetts problem, this is like a country problem. And I think it's from, like, you know, my social worker brain, this is bullying, from where I sit, should be a community owned issue. So I wanted to ask the board and the admin if they would, what they would think of creating a bullying prevention coordination committee that is like set up like our other committees, where we would get monthly liaison reports, a group that, because this exists in other places. This is not something magical that I dreamed about. And you know, it kind of reminded me a lot of, I worked at a company that was a chemist, and no matter what happened, we would have a group of like stakeholders from like HR, safety, the lab people, when we'd all come together when something bad would happen, like the guy that kept exploding sodium in his lab. And we'd be like, well, is it a training issue? Is it we're not hiring the right people? Is it whatever? So all of these different eyes on this problem. And my thought being, if we had that incredible group of stakeholders in the community, we have Youth and Family of the Police Department, we have Freedom Team, we have SHC, we have the Mental Health Collaborative, we have all of these incredible, we're well-resourced communities. If we could meet regularly with them and help get lists of resources to parents, if educators had questions, because that's something that I've heard before. It's like, it seemed like the person I was talking to, whether it was an administrator or an educator, they didn't exactly know how to address the problem, because it's not a problem. We're an increasing diversity, we're increasing in socioeconomic status, in culture, religion, anything that you can think of. So it seems like not fair to expect our administrators and our teachers to always know what to do in every situation, but we do have the resources around us. So I wanted to present the idea of creating a committee where we're always talking about how to stop this from happening, how we like put in systems to prevent it from happening, so we can take it off the plates of our teachers and our administrators, where we're always thinking about this and we're always coming up with new resources and new ideas, and if it's a policy change, because I love our plan. Our plan is thorough, it addresses everything, but it seems that this is the climate around us, that is going to weigh heavier and heavier on us as we move forward because we're lacking mental health resources nationwide, right? And it's a fraught socio-political environment, and our kids don't get to escape that, just as we do not. So it was an idea that I had based on reading all of this stuff, this excellent material that we have, and hearing the stories of people that maybe don't get caught by these, or maybe they're not substantiated cases, but their kids are still suffering. So that was something I thought of, and I didn't think of it by myself. It like exists in the world, but I thought we could bring it because we have a like wonderful community around us.
So I love the idea of collaborating with our town community and other resources we have. The question just for clarification, are you talking about a group that comes together and discusses at the kind of the higher level of what the problems are, or a group that discusses individual cases?
Well, that would kind of be at the discretion of like the committee and the administration, right? Like you can have like a micro level, like these things happen, this is how we addressed it. Could we have improved upon that? Or we could look at it like a macro level, like these are the trends we're seeing within the school system. What are the resources we can deploy from within the community? Like I know Carol talks about the Freedom Team. They have, active bystander training, but they also have education on having difficult conversation and how to talk about hard topics. Like if we're going to talk about racism, transphobia, homophobia, like anything, like classism, right? How do we have those conversations in a meaningful and thoughtful and respectful way, And those are the things that I think, as we talked about at the beginning of the year, the state is kind of asking us to have those conversations, right? Mediation and restorative justice. And it would be, I don't think it should be I know that a lot of folks in the community expect all the people at the table to know all the answers, and that's not reasonable. If we had a group of people that was their focus, maybe it would alleviate some of the pressure from both the teachers and the administrators, because then we would always be talking about this, right? Rather than I know we always are talking about it, but this is the first time we've talked about it, I think, in this school year, right? And I think it's the people that have to deal with it every day. Our kids have to deal with it every day, right?
So when I hear that, I love the thought process. When I hear that, my question is, would that be something we would do, or would that be something the town should do? If we're trying to get resources from all these different groups to get together.
I don't know that I hear what you're saying. I think that we should have presence, and I think, but if we're talking if we're talking about things that are happening within the schools, right? If we're talking about bullying in the school, it probably should be owned by the committee, or at least the district.
It's similar in a way, it sounds similar in a way, maybe not, your idea of like the HOP Coalition, which it's not only is it town generated, but there are representatives from the schools who are liaisons and sit on that, but also there's a paid person who oversees it. And I don't know, I love the idea. We've talked before about trying to collaborate with the select board and Parks and Rec and whatever, because there are it is a community issue, but I do worry about getting beyond the scope of, to own something beyond the scope of what we already own, which is quite substantial.
Sure.
And knowing that within what we can control, we have, as articulated in the plan, like we have an approach to getting at the root cause. There's a ton of work going on in what we control.
Sure.
And so I feel like the town would probably be a better place to initiate collaborating with all the things we can't control.
Sure, but I'm talking specifically about within the schools. This is like the people that I've talked to are families or parents or children or students. I like the work I do with the Freedom Team. I get to be in contact with a lot of older students, and I've heard many stories of harassment, or I don't know if it was reached a level of bullying, that they were never able to get resolved in a way where they felt safe in that space. And maybe it is because we have so many asks of our teachers and our administrators that it is very, very hard for them to be able to take the time out to say, you're getting so harassed that you do not want to go to your French class. You do not feel safe there. But it is not bullying. It is you feeling uncomfortable around a group of people. How can we address that type of issue? Because that is actually like a very specific thing that I've heard. Like somebody was not feeling safe in a classroom and they did not want to go, and they were asked why they weren't going, and it was a very specific answer, but there wasn't really anything that could be done. They cannot remove the person from the classroom. It wasn't every single day, you know what I'm saying? It didn't reach the level of bullying, but it's still a problem because we want our kids to feel safe wherever they are. And I mean, you know, just because somebody else did it one way doesn't mean we have to, and it may not be feasible, but I would. There are a lot of people that have asked me to speak on their behalf, and I would feel remiss if I didn't.
So I think one of my worries is just about confidentiality.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You know,
yeah,
like there's not a way, I think, for community members to learn about things that are happening in our schools.
I think that's very fair. But I would the idea would be like if we had like right now in this like fraught climate, we have a lot of transphobia, correct? Like we see it everywhere that affects our kiddos, and maybe it's not that they hear it every day. Maybe it's the way they're treated, like the cold shoulder, the isolation. Maybe it's a bias thing, but they don't feel comfortable reporting it, right? But we can have education or resources within the schools for them to access, or for having a conversation, or maybe it's a teaching moment. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know exactly how it would look, but I'm just hopeful that maybe we can bring bullying before the board on a regular basis, so we can have conversations about the things that might be happening that don't reach the level of DESE, you know?
So I feel like we have a lot to kind of chew on here.
I said a
Yeah.
lot of things.
No, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think it's a lot to make any kind of a decision or kind of direction forward without having the opportunity to look through it. I have two things that occur to me that I think would have to be part of the discussion if we're going to do something on a larger level. One is obviously the privacy, but also when you're talking, I'm envisioning that it's two separate processes. The one process the school has to own as a legal responsibility, and that the administrators have to be the ones who are conducting what's legally required of the schools. But I don't think that precludes other work being done on a collaborative way with different groups.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree.
But
in order to have a further discussion, can we just have it as new business for another meeting, and we can sit down and
right, and maybe if as homework for that for us would be to look at what other districts have done and how they have addressed the issues of wanting to make sure that our schools are able to stay strong in the pieces that we own already, and to protect student confidentiality while still being able to do really excellent work.
I think our plan is excellent, but I think that gaps exist simply because we are in an unprecedented time of mental health and trauma and just fraught feeling everywhere, right? We know hurt people. It's like behaviors, it's not people. And how do we navigate those very complicated things?
Yeah, but I think the homework assignment makes a lot of sense, because this is such a hard thing to navigate.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do we have actual control over? What do the schools control?
Yeah.
You know,
What's the policy
underneath?
that I
Where
worry
can
about?
we actually, support and help without, stepping on a principal's toes or doing something? So I think that's a great homework assignment, is figuring out what has been done, and is there a way to support?
Yeah, like at the community level, there's certainly things that people could do, but the schools really do operate exclusively, around this, because I think that we see a lot of issues around mental health or behavior or diversity or equity, and those are all things that are very confidential.
Yeah, I don't want, that's not, it's more of at a policy level, and that's where one of the things that I hear a lot is like, I think our policy has gaps here and here and here and here, and you know, parents, like, see, when you're talking about your kid, it's very, very clear what the gaps exist. So I don't know what needs to happen, but I know that I have a lot of folks that have talked to me about suffering and how their kids are trying to manage it within the schools, and maybe there's something we can do about it. And I want it to be clear also that I recognize that this is a national issue. It's not a Hopkinton issue, but we are well poised to address it in a very profound and collaborative way.
Right, just because it's a national issue doesn't mean that there aren't different things that we could do on a local level.
Yeah.
In different ways to support
Yeah.
youth and families in town, and to work in different ways. Kind of I would see it as a supplemental piece, but I would say if we all take a little bit of time to look and research what's out there, that might be.
Thank you for all listening to me.
Thank you.
And I think that is, and to your point, I think that is its own topip. It's different from like a bullying report. The bullying report is like a little different. It's the same subject, but that is it's a topic all in and of itself.
Yeah,
That we
it's
should
related
definitely
to.
put plenty of time on once we do our homework.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, it's related to, right? It's
Yeah.
all, like, we listed, like, Carol has a very well-rounded list of resources that we can, like, how can we more formally enlist the help of those resources, right? Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so I am going to ask if it's okay with the committee if we take the FY budget update out of order, just because that is a big piece. And I, as I had indicated before the meeting started, I do have to leave a little bit early.
Yep.
And just want to make sure that we're able to discuss.
Okay, so as you know, the FY24 operating budget has maybe changed ever so slightly after a meeting with appropriations. So I had asked Mrs. Rothman to put just 3 slides together today so that we could have a conversation about that ever so slight change. And so, Susan, if you'll talk about that, that'd be great.
Sure. So the first slide, what you see really is the school committee budget that you approved on January 19th. And there's been a lot of discussions, as we've said, how many times we've discussed this budget. So this slide should be very familiar to you. If you want to go to the next slide. As we know, the select board and appropriations recommended a budget that was different than what the school committee had approved. And what that net effect is a reduction to the school committee approved budget of $235,000. There was discussion about a potential for a grant, and maybe that would come into play, but we did not get awarded that grant. So that came off the table, and as was discussed, they held us harmless for that and allowed that to stay within our budget because we only came up with that $235,000, not the $350,000 that they originally wanted us to. So the net result, if you go to the next slide, is where we stand now. This is the amended operating budget that was passed by both the select board and the appropriations for the schools is $59,937,752, and the increase is a 7.9% as opposed to the 8.4 that was originally approved in January.
Did you find out if the 70,000 in one-time funds could be funded out of something else?
That has not been responded to yet.
Okay.
So we will work with the buildings and see what it is that we're taking out. For instance, I've already had a conversation with Craig Hay on his tuba, and so we're working to see if we can find, you know, when you have little pockets of accounts that get underspent, you know, then potentially overspend that music to account for all those little underspents, kind of grab them all together and get that tuba. So we'll work with the buildings.
Okay.
So we've had a lot of unique challenges this year with the budget. It is the first time that I can ever remember that we wound up in a place where our budget was moving forward through the select board and the appropriations committee, where the budget that we had adopted not once but twice there's a discrepancy in terms of what we have done. I think the challenge of where we are right now is that the money is not going to be appropriated, whether we vote it or we don't. The town meeting does not solicit the position of the school committee on the overall budget because it is part of the overall budget. If we had done it as statutorily, it is possible to put our own budget separate on the town meeting warrant. That's not how we do it, because we want to work as part of the larger group and to collaborate with the town. So I guess at this point, I think we've put a lot of heart and soul into getting our budget from back where we were in November to getting to where we are today. We have the opportunity or not opportunity to revote the budget tonight. I think in terms of pros, even though I know that we all had some reservations about voting the budget again, the not voting to adopt the budget that is being put forward, I think could potentially put us in an awkward position at town meeting. And I think that awkward's not always bad, but we're also going to be going before the town in the fall for a special town meeting and asking the town for a whole lot of money. And I want to make sure that we go forward in a way that feels collaborative to the town. So I appreciate all that you guys have done with the budget. I appreciate all that we did to try to really hold on to where our bottom line is. But I think for me right now, my hope would be to move forward with the budget as recommended at this point by you guys, so that we can move forward and not sort of cut off our nose to spite our face. And that it is a group thought, so I can be the only one who feels that way, and that's okay.
Could you put the other slide up?
I sure will, yeah.
But that's.
Well, I'll go first. So I'm in a little bit of an awkward spot because I won't be a member of this committee in the fall, so I won't have to face up to my decision today this fall. So, I'm feeling a little guilty about that, but, I can appreciate both sides right now, and I can see why we're trying to keep things as smooth as possible but I also think that none of this is a surprise. What did we think was going to happen when we built 2,000 new family homes, 4-bedroom homes? There was little doubt in anyone's mind that they were going to fill with families. And now they're here, and we need the money. We've been talking about it for 10 years, at least more. I don't remember what year I first ran for school committee, but whatever it was, that was the thing everyone was talking about then too. So I mean, I am inclined to stay with my statements from January and March and yesterday that I believe we voted a very fiscally responsible budget in January. I think it was what it needed to be. In fact, I think it was less than what it needed to be, but it was the fiscally responsible budget that needed to come forward. And so, but I won't be here in this seat to have to ask for more money later on. So I'm inclined to not revote this new number, but I can appreciate the challenge that the next iteration of the school committee is going to have. So I don't want to create a greater challenge by not revoting that number.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to ask if you wanted to make a recommendation in terms of, because I don't know your comfort level, if you want to put that out with making the reductions, or whether it would feel more supportive
Sure, I'm happy
for
to
us
talk about
not
that.
to revoke.
And you know that we've been working with the building principals and all the directors throughout this entire process. And I think it was it could have been a couple of months ago now, maybe. I don't even remember how long ago, when we first looked at this slide, and at the time we had the $110,000 grant on there as well, and we were at about trying to reach the 350 mark. We're down to a $235,000 sort of difference between where we originally wanted to be and where the town has asked us to be. I feel like the 70,000 in one-time purchases are going to be able to happen, and so I'm not really worried about that. One of the pieces up there that I know was very important to Mr. Bishop was the computer science teacher. We have a lot of students who are asking for computer science. Computer science in this day and age should be available to all of our kids. This still gets us 0.4 or 2 additional sections of computer science. So, while it's not probably every single thing that we wanted, I am certainly comfortable enough to recommend this to you. And I agree with you, Nancy, that if we're going to have a special town meeting in the fall and bring forward the Elmwood project, I think if this number were loads bigger and we were that far away and I thought it was going to be really detrimental to kids, I would be drawing that line in the sand with you, Jen, for sure. But because we've gotten to this place, while it's not everything that we would have wanted, I think that we can do good things for kids being $235,000 apart.
Can I ask you a fast question that
course
we
you
might not
can.
know the answer to, and I appreciate that I'm putting you on the spot. So we can add 2 new sections of computer science. Will that take us off the need to farm out computer science?
It should, yes. That's Mr. Bishop's goal, yep. That was the one place I think this year where, if I had to say, was there something that we didn't do well for kids? That would have been one of those places where I thought we could do something more. Another thing that is in this budget are the 2 grade 5 teachers. I feel like those class sizes at Hopkins are ballooning, and we need to do something to reduce that. So there are, I don't know if everything in life is a negotiation, but there are a lot of perks, I think, as well in this budget.
What position does this put us in for next year? Because this will be our starting point, right? So we have predictions of growth within the community. Do you think that this position, the starting position next year, is going to be very, very painful to get to where we need to be to sustain where we are now at next year's budget? And I'm asking you to look at a crystal ball or be like a weather forecaster or whatever, but in your heart, do you feel like this is worrisome to you?
This is not worrisome to me, but I think that this community needs to get used to the fact that the schools are going to be adding FTEs.
Yeah, right.
What I had sent to appropriations, if we looked back to the year 2010, we were probably at 14.6 students to every 1 teacher.
Yeah.
And today it's 14.1 students to every teacher. That hasn't changed. Yeah. There's a narrative out there that says, oh, the schools keep adding FTEs and they're really fattening the teaching repertoire, or the administrators are. And the truth of the matter really is that we're not. We're just keeping pace in terms of physical plants and in terms of FTEs with the growth in this town. So we know what our demographers are saying about growth, and as we move into the new Elmwood School, or as we get to 800 kids at Hopkins, which is the prediction, we are not going to be able to sustain with 1 building principal and 1 assistant principal. So our next successive budgets, you're going to see assistant principals in there.
Yeah, right.
We're going to be adding those positions now in anticipation of opening. So I've gone a long way, Holly, to say that I'm not worried about this end number, but I do think we have to start realizing that if someone says, oh, there are 20 FTEs total being added to the school budget, that may become more of a norm.
Right. Well, because we have the kiddos that need the teachers, right?
Yes.
That's just... Right. So it's interesting that there's this thought that we're just having 20 teachers hanging out in a room or whatever. There are kids in front of all those teachers.
We also didn't add all 20. Some of those came out of grant funding.
They were
or
grant funded prior, right.
The one thing that is I guess an advantage to the grant would have been wonderful, and it would have been great to have the money, but the grant would not have been included in our base budget next year.
Sure.
The money coming out of the town's budget, we'll make that $115,000 from the grant be included in our base budget next year.
Okay.
So that's a,
So,
Okay, none of you read.
okay, so I tend to be a middle of the road person. I tend to try to be very thoughtful about what I vote on and what I don't. And I totally understand this, and I would probably vote for this. But I want to put my concern on the record that we keep talking about a very collaborative process with the town. The schools have had a very collaborative process. We have started in September thinking about budgets. We have had meetings with our town partners starting in the fall. This has not been opaque, and some of the commentary that we've been getting has been very concerning and frankly slightly derogatory towards us, and that will not lead to good partnerships in coming years. I do not enjoy hearing from other parts of the town, oh, we have to collaborate more. I'm like, how much more can we possibly collaborate? Just because someone has not been paying attention, being part of the meetings that we have with the town, it doesn't mean we weren't there, right? And I feel very strongly that the town has to start thinking about collaborating with us. Because if appropriations or the select board were paying attention in November, they could have had a message to us and said, okay, let's start talking about how to change this. And we would have had 3 to 4 months to think about how to change it instead of a week here or 2 weeks there.
Or a weekend.
Or a weekend.
Appropriations was at every one of our budget meetings.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
Yeah, they were here.
They
I remember.
typically follow the select board's recommendation, the appropriations, but I will say, I agree with everything that you're saying 100%. I will also say that there are other years that have felt more collaborative to me in terms of when I think a lot of years we have a discrepancy between where the town hopes will be and where the schools have needs that we want to make sure are met. In other years, some other years, when there has been a large discrepancy between them, we didn't just kind of take a number from the town. It wasn't just given it to us at that point. There were meetings where all town departments sat down together, one year at the senior center, and everybody talked about different ways to get to what the town needed. It wasn't from one board to the school committee to say, this is what you will do. It was, how can we as a town reach this number? And that is a different conversation. And if it had happened earlier, it would have been for sure less stress on our administrators.
I heard the phrase, why aren't they compromising? And I say, along what you were just saying, compromising in what? Which part of our kids' education do you think should be compromised? I said before, the admins, the teachers told us, this is what we need to do to sustain. Any cuts are actual cuts and they will impact kids, so there's no such thing as a compromise in education.
But not just that.
Right.
We were at these meetings.
Right, yeah.
Right? So at any point, somebody could have said, okay, the direction you're going, we see that it's higher than what we wanted. We're a little concerned. Let's sit down and chat about it. And then give you time to really think about it. We spend, January, so September to January, so 5 months coming up with the initial budget, and then asking us to cut over 2 days is frankly irresponsible, right? It's very hard to find the exact places where we could cut a little here and cut a little there. And maybe we wouldn't have ended up here if we had had a month or two to really carefully think. We might not have lost an FTE because we would have said, oh, we can take 10K here and 10K there, and very slowly, carefully figured out just how to work with it. But 2 days to come up with a difference, there's only so much you can do. So yeah, like I said, going forward, I personally don't think it's about us collaborating with anybody. I think it's about other people collaborating with us when we are fully transparent and open about the process that we've had.
Just to echo on it, because I appreciate everything you just said, and part of the way we've been collaborating is that we have been completely transparent about projections of enrollment, which we've done three times, I believe. We have given, as we do every year, 10-year capital projections for our, we are a cost center in the town that projects forward beyond what most cost centers are able to do or take the time to do or invest in doing. We've hired consultants to do this for us so that the whole town can see the students who are coming, and then we report as they come so we can check the accuracy of the projections, which unfortunately are outpacing, and we're outpacing the projections. And we see Dr. Kavanaugh for years saying for every 20 students is at 1.4 FTE. I mean, these are numbers that we could all rattle off because we've seen them not in one presentation but over and over and over again. So I think exactly to your point, we have done aside from our process, which is open, lengthy, and transparent, we've also given everybody the tools to anticipate what the future years are going to bring. And so I 100% echo what you said. I'm, again, not that I didn't want the grant, but I was very concerned about moving ahead with head count with one-time funding. It just doesn't feel good, was something that I really didn't like about taking that money. I think we can probably find the 70,000. I'm relieved that we are addressing computer science, for sure. I'm a little concerned about fine arts. I'm not sure what this will do to the fine arts bandwidth. But I think the biggest number on the page is the tech integration specialist. So these are individuals that carried us through the pandemic. I have to go with your recommendation if you think that we can comfortably go forward. If I know that our administrators, teachers, and staff have all become over the last decade increasingly savvy at doing their a lot of their own sort of self-help, which is great. But these educators also play an important role. So I'm a little concerned if we can eke by next year. Do we anticipate not needing to hire back? Is this a cut that we think can be permanent, or are we thinking this is just for next year and then we're going to have to ask for them back?
It's hard to say. I'm hoping that it will be permanent. I'll tell you where I think you're probably going to need to put money is. So as we looked at those per teacher-student ratios, and we say, well, we're still sticking right around 14-1. What we've seen, though, is that we have had to hire mental health people, and we've had to hire ESOL teachers. And so what that means is when we're putting those folks into the head count, it means that class sizes are creeping up a little bit, or special education caseloads are creeping up, or even those ESOL caseloads are creeping up. Like the ESOL teachers, some of them have lower caseloads, but some of them have caseloads as high as 30, or special educators who used to work with caseloads of 10 and 12, and now they're at 16. So I think in some of those specialty areas, like especially in special education, we're going to be knocking on our doors. We've got kids who are at Marathon School who have special education needs. We had to move a 0.5 special educator from Elmwood to Marathon. And when you have to start moving personnel around to meet kids' needs, you know that you're not in a good place. And so I do want to be very cautious and just say where we're seeing some of that really like sort of the bleeding jugular vein, so to speak, and I know that may not be the loveliest phrasing, but that's where it is. That's where it is.
So one thing that I probably won't be on the committee to hear, but I would love to hear, is the projection from the preschool to the kindergarten, right? So we know that most of the preschool students are students that are high needs in some way. Mm-hmm. How many of those are there in compared to how many there are in kindergarten? Like, are we going to see a huge jump in special education support at the kindergarten level when we're seeing such a huge jump at the pre-K? And this, I think that's something we can foresee a year in advance right now, right? Because most of those children in pre-K are going to go into our kindergartens.
Yes. I mean, the beauty is that you've got 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, so you've got, incrementally they'll be leaving. But when we opened Marathon, I think we had 53 students in the pre-K, and today we have 115. So you're making a great point. The beauty of pre-K is that we know we have a head count of how many kids are going to move from pre-K into kindergarten. I think that our issue has been that kids just continue to qualify. We were always a sort of 12.5% district, and now we're kind of a 13.5% district. And as we're looking at Elmwood School replacement, Dr. Zaleski and I keep using the number 15% because our special education percentage could go that high, for sure.
But for this,
I'm sorry. We are off on a tangent.
Okay.
totally, I think the message that we are going to need FTE is spot on.
Yes.
I mean, specifically, though, you are comfortable with where we are here for 2024.
I am.
Is there anybody who would like to make a motion on that?
Oh wait, the motion is TBD.
What you would like? It's
motion
TBD,
is
yes.
TBD.
So if somebody wanted to make a motion, I think it would be,
The next slide.
Oops, I'm sorry.
yeah. It would be if somebody wanted to make a motion that put us in kind of alignment with where the town is, it would be for that bolded bottom number on that slide there.
To approve the amended operating budget.
Yes.
That's very good.
I'm not going to make that motion.
Yes, I was going to fall out of my chair if you did.
No, it's not going to be mine.
So because of the special town meeting, I will move to approve the amended operating budget
In the amount of?
in the amount of $59,937,752, or 7.9% increase.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Then, all those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. So it passes then 3-2 to adopt the amended budget.
I know. Would have been good to have that maybe in
All
that
right,
one.
thank you. I apologize because I do have to run.
No, you
So
need
I'm going to shift that over to Amanda.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good break to everybody who's.
You too.
And I want to say thank you to all of you. I know how challenging this has been for you as well, truly.
Wow. I don't think, I think it pales in comparison to what's going on
Yeah,
that side of the
exactly.
table, but.
We just have to vote it. You all are the ones actually doing all the work.
Susan's calculator doesn't have any of the numbers left on it.
Fair enough.
Okay, moving along. I think we need to go back to HMS Robotics' final intent.
Yes, so quickly, I just need for you to give the final approval for the middle school robotics team to travel to Dallas, Texas. They'll be leaving on April 29th and returning on May 3rd. 15 students, and Pat Allen, the middle school robotics person, is their leader.
And she's a rock star.
She
That's,
is.
that program is amazing. I don't want to make the motion unless someone wants to discuss, but I'll do this motion. I move to approve HMS Robotics travel to Dallas for the VEX Robotics Championship Tournament.
I'll second it.
Motion by Jen, second by Holly. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. And the motion passes. And that brings us, if I'm not skipping anything, to future agenda items.
And I think we've already discussed that.
We've got one. Right?
And do we have, and did you want to have a report at some point on
It was
On the
computer
tech-
time.
technology education? Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, part of the reason I worry about that is when I was in Pittsburgh, I was co-creator of a multi-school district big data competition for high schools, and we had numerous high schools involved. I just found that it went multi-state, yay, but not when I was involved. But the point is, you know, we had high school students working with big data, looking at, you know, government data sets and coding things to figure out how to get certain results, answer certain questions about them, etc. And you know, that's real life, that's reality, that's what we deal with a lot now, right? And so knowing what the gaps are and where we need to go in terms of how much the children are getting exposed to kind of that organic usage, I think is super important, and knowing, you know, how can we in coming years ensure that if we have a gap there, it's getting filled. It would be awesome.
Any others?
Yeah, I had a request from community. I know, Jeff, earlier this year you talked about a really large mental health grant that you were the recipient of. I don't even know how many hours. It was I remember at the beginning of the year.
Right.
Right. So a couple of people in the community were wondering how we use that grant within the district, and
Sure.
I didn't know if you'd be willing to talk about it and share with that, because I thought I could have bounced you, but I thought maybe the rest of the community would want to know.
It might make more sense if it pleases the committee to talk more about. It sounded nice.
Very
If we
fancy.
talk more about, you know, really what some of our you know, action steps and initiatives are related to that. So whether or not they're funded through that competitive grant that we did receive.
Yeah.
That's the one we actually got. That we could do that.
That'd be
But we could
amazing.
also, there's so much happening across our schools in programs and departments that it might be more comprehensive to do something like that.
Thank you so much. That'd be
Yeah.
wonderful.
It does actually dovetail too to what you were talking about earlier, but not to bring back the conversation about the bullying committee
Right.
idea, but
That's the work that you're doing,
but
right?
so much of what we're doing is proactive.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be talking about bullying or shades of, or if we're talking about what our DEI work or our you know, whatever it might be, our SEL work, seeing how that all converges.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's-
And I think that's the question that we always get. Like, I don't have I don't have the information on all the schools, and I know there's a lot of work being done, and I think it would be great for the community to see it. And I'm thankful that you offered all of that up. I just asked for a little piece, but you gave yourself more
Did I
work.
accidentally do that?
I also would love to see in the discussion a comparison to other school districts, because I think one of the things, it's hard to know when you are embedded in a school district and your children have always been in that school district. Like, it's really easy to see the weaknesses, right? But sometimes you don't have a comparison point to understand, you know, what are the real strengths of this school district compared to many others. So I think if there was a way, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but just to kind of show that comparison, right? Because frankly, you know, I'm blown away all the time, and my kids were in a school district in Pittsburgh for most of their lives, and, you know, in several schools, and, you know, I'm blown away all the time by some of the stuff that's done here. But when you, like I said, when you raise your kids within the same school district the whole time, it just seems normal, right? All the richness you get and everything just seems like that's normal school, right?
Yeah.
So.
And not to diminish the great work we're doing, but I was at a meeting earlier today with other regional district leaders, and there's a lot of great work happening. There's a lot of great districts doing a lot of great work, and it's always great to be able to connect with them, because we can learn what they're doing and borrow from them, but also shine a light on what we're doing so that we can inspire them to see what we're doing as well. So
Thank you.
it's part of the great community that is the school systems in Massachusetts.
That's awesome.
Excellent. good future meetings are on the horizon. All right, items by consensus, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Leah, second by Jen. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. And the motion passes. And that brings us to adjournment.
Go ahead. You're gonna give me that. I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Jen, second by Leah. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. And we are adjourned at 8:39. Our next meeting is on April 27th. It's a public hearing on school choice and a regular meeting. And we have May 1st, the annual town meeting. Town residents who are voters, please show up and vote.
Right.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. School choice always sneaks up.
It does.